So I want this article, I'm warning you, this is from a decade ago, but listen to this. This is from Business Insider. The staggering cost of the last decade's U.S. war in Iraq in numbers by Michael B. Kelly and Jeffrey Ingersoll. 2014, June. There's a huge difference between the very limited expansion of the U.S.'s presence in Iraq that President Obama announced on June 19th and the full U.S. invasion of the last decade. Still, the very fact that the U.S. is sending additional troops to Iraq, because we still have troops over there, and this, imagine, like these numbers, imagine, they're just going to be bigger and bigger than they are even in this article, where the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant has taken over major cities and infrastructure, bringing the last big U.S. military operation in the country to mind, as well as its steep costs. Obama's response to the latest crisis won't look anything like Operation Iraqi Freedom. In this case, the military's aim, scope, methods, and targets will be far different than they were when the U.S. invaded in 2003. But with Iraq back in the news, it's worth reflecting on the staggering price of the last big U.S. entanglement in the country and recalling what the U.S. has already sacrificed. 189,000 direct war deaths, which doesn't include the hundreds of thousands more that died due to war-related hardships. And this was a decade ago, remember. 4,488 U.S. service personnel killed directly. 32,223 troops injured, not including PTSD. 134,000 civilians killed directly. 655,000 persons who have died in Iraq since the invasion that would not have died if the invasion had not occurred. 150 reporters killed. 2.8 million people who remain either internally displaced or have fled the country. $1.7 trillion is the amount in war expenses spent by the U.S. Treasury Department as through fiscal year of 2013. I mean, I've heard anywhere from 7 trillion to 23 trillion is what we spent on this war total now. $5,000 per second, every second, $5,000. $350,000 cost to deploy one American military member. $490 billion is the amount in war benefits owed to war veterans. Owed! While he's firing them and taking their benefits, taking the suicide prevention line. $7 trillion. That's the projected interest payments due by 2053. Because the war was paid for with borrowed money, $20 billion was the amount paid to KBR, a contractor responsible for equipment and services. We have different equipment and services these days, so Palantir is going to be big in on this war in Iran. $3 billion of the amount paid to KBR payments that the Pentagon auditors considered questionable, but fuck it. Oopsies. $3 billion, no big deal. $60 billion was the amount paid for reconstruction, which was ruled largely a waste due to corruption and shoddy work. $4 billion was the amount owed to the U.S. by Iraq before the invasion, but 1.6 million gallons of oil were used by U.S. forces each day in Iraq at $127.68 a barrel. $12 billion was the cost per month of the war by 2008. $7 billion was the amount owed to Iraq by the U.S. after the war, mostly due to fraud. $546 million is missing in spare parts. Also missing 190,000 guns, including 110,000 AK-47s. So we just armed them for free. 40% increase in Iraqi oil production is $5 billion revenue from Iraqi oil in 2003. $85 billion revenue from Iraqi oil in 2011. $5 billion in 2003, $85 billion in 2011. $150 billion is the amount oil companies are expected to invest in oil development over the next decade. $75 billion is the approximate amount expected to go to American subcontracting companies, largest of all, Halliburton. 0 nuclear weapons of mass destruction found. though a bunch of chems were discovered. Perhaps most importantly, this list doesn't account for the emotional damage caused to service members, their families, as well as the destruction to the homes, the social fabric, and the psyche of the Iraqi people. For some visual accounts, check out BuzzFeed's Iraq War in front pages and Times Iraq War in images. So, it's all big money. It's another grift. Okay, and then he can claim war powers. Trump can. So there doesn't have to be any elections, because that's exactly what Netanyahu's doing right now in Israel. It's been time to hold an election there, but oopsies, can't hold one. I'm still at war. Still at war. He's been wanting this since the 80s and very vocal about it. I'm going to find the Daily Mail clip and play it for you in my next video. Thank you for watching me. Love you guys. You're great. I've made some really good friends here. I love the people on TikTok. Except for the trolls. I mean, some of you are bots, and some of you are just absolutely radicalized. Like, just drink the Kool-Aid, listen to Fox News, and just regurgitate, like, narrative lines. Like, it's kind of boring, and I don't really have time for y'all. Once in a while, I'll answer somebody, but not really. Thank you, everybody, though, for watching me. See you next time.